Need to create a complex enterprise Angular application? Angular Bootcamp is an intensive 3-day workshop class to learn the basics of Angular through sophisticated techniques for real-world applications. We target Angular 6 and the recent versions, with much of the curriculum is suitable back to Angular 2. Or go beyond the 3-day class with a consultation or project launch with Oasis Digital, the team behind Angular Bootcamp. We can assist your team or launch your project with advanced Angular topics including scalability, data flow, state management, full-stack product design, and more. Contact us for a private class at your location or buy a ticket for public classes in various cities around the U.S. and occasionally in Europe. Online live instructor training is also available at angularbootcamp.com.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Angular. And today on our panel we have Eames.
Hey everybody.
Alyssa Nicoll.
Hey.
Ward Bell.
Hello, if you can hear me.
And I'm Shai Reznik. I'm hosting this episode for Chuck. I'm filling in for Chuck, but he will be with us next week. And today we have 3 special guests. We have Tracy Lee.
Hello, everyone.
And Jay Phelps.
Hello.
And Ben Lesh.
Hello.
Okay, so 3 people who probably don't need any introduction, but let's do a short one for people who just joining our community, just in a short sentence about each of you, and then we'll kick off the episode.
Okay, so my name is Tracey. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLate. I'm a co-founder of a company called this.labs, and we do a lot of stuff for the JavaScript community, as well as JavaScript consulting, also on the RxJS core team, and a Google developer expert for the web and Angular. Super happy to be here, as always.
Nice.
So this is Jay Phelps, and I am also a co-founder of this dot. Used to be on the RxJS core team. These days I'm not, but I used to be. And I used to be an engineer at Netflix.
Nice. Okay, we'll talk about why they kicked you out. And now Ben Lesh.
Well, I'm Ben Lesh, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Lesh. I'm an engineer at Google, and I'm the RxJS project lead. And I work on the Angular team. And I'm wearing a React shirt, if that helps.
Boo!
It's radio, Ben. We cannot see it, but
that's why I told you.
Yeah, we'll take your word for it. Okay, cool. So thank you very much. By the way, should I say that I'm Shai Reznik from devchat.tv or highres.io? I'm not sure because I'm filling in for chat. But anyway, let's start the episode. So today we're talking about RxJS, and we had a lot of changes, things going on in the past year about it, and we'd love to hear, first of all, maybe one of you can tell us, again, a summary of what happened in the last year in RxJS realm.
Well, there's lots of things that have happened. I think we can all kind of just touch on some things. One thing I guess I can start with is the fact that there was previously something called Test Scheduler, and it was not really documented well because it was actually written and intended for internal use by RxJS itself rather than public use. But it was a pretty useful thing, and the general gist of it is to be able to virtualize time itself. So if you've written a lot of async code, especially code that has like timers and stuff like that, one of the pains of testing it is there's a lot of different ways to test it, but the ways a lot of people usually test it, they actually let time progress naturally. Like they, use real timers or whatever, and they just use async functions or whatever they do. And one of the problems with that is then your tests have to run that long. So like it's like, let's say you had a timer that waits for 60 seconds. Now your test runs at least 60 seconds long. And that's obviously no bueno because that can add up really quickly and make your test run significantly longer than it needs to. The other problem with it is just the determinism, the ability to, when you use real timers, real JavaScript timers aren't accurate, right? They're nowhere near accurate. So you're not really testing that the time actually progressed as it should. You most of the time are just testing that time progressed some arbitrary amount of time, and maybe that time is correct relative to another time or whatever, but it's not really testing that fully. And so the test scheduler allows you to virtualize time within RxJS world only, though. And it allows you to use these things called ASCII marble diagrams. So they're just text, and you write like a description of how the observables should flow, like the values flowing out of an observable. So it's kind of hard to describe what it's really helpful to see it visually. But anyway, this thing we created for version 5, was used internally, and then in version 6 we kind of wanted to open it up and make it more usable for the public. And so we created a public API, some public documents or documentation around it. It's the testscheduler.run method if you're trying to Google it. And a couple of additions based on feedback from the community is the ability to arbitrarily describe how much time you want to progress. So if you want like 200 milliseconds to progress, you can say 200 ms and it will progress 200 milliseconds. Whereas before you use these dashes and you'd have to, before they used to represent 10 milliseconds, and so you'd have to do quite a number of those dashes to get to 200 milliseconds or to 2 minutes or what have you. And then also the other problem that really kind of made it infeasible for a lot of people is that you had to pass around the test scheduler. So you had to use dependency injection and pass it around, and it was really annoying. Whereas when you're using the testscheduler.run method, the usage of the test scheduler will just automatically happen for you transparently. Any operator that uses a scheduler, so like debounce time and things like that, will just use that scheduler automatically for you. You don't have to manually inject it. So that's a real nice thing. There's a bunch of things we want to do around the test scheduler to improve it, and we spent a ton of time trying to do so. But it was becoming one of those things where it was like, we want to, instead of trying to fix everything under the sun and dragging it out for long periods, we wanted to get out an iterative process, like just what we were confident that we could get out for version 6. So Ben probably
Can I interrupt for a second there on the because you hit on the sore spot for me, because I've been using the test scheduler, but I always had to have that injection thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're saying I can yank that out of there? I don't have to write my code with injecting a scheduler in there. It'll just happen for me automatically with 6?
Yeah, only if you use testscheduler.run. So there's a documentation page, and I don't know if you guys post like notes with this, but we can give you a link to post to the docs.
Yeah, you can post in the chat. And
cool. Okay, cool. So it allows you, so inside there, you basically provide a callback to this method when you call it, and inside of that callback, any code that executes will use that test scheduler automatically. It'll, instead of needing to use dependency injection. So that's the trick we use, is inside that callback. All the injection just happens for you automatically.
And that's great. Is 6 out? I'm a little behind. I guess I'm on 5. Is it on 6 now?
It is. Yep. And 6 is out.
So remember that ngconf thing? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I heard about that.
So I have a question for someone who didn't use it before. How can I try it? Do I use the RxJS marble testing, or should I use it directly?
So the best way to get started is just to take a look at the doc page, and it'll walk you through not only the API, but also just how the ASCII marble diagrams themselves, and trying to explain them. It's kind of a tough, it's one of those things where it's some people, they get it very naturally and they're like, oh yeah, duh. But other people are like, it's a lot harder. We're still, I guess, thinking of ways of what's the best way to describe it to people. How do you describe, because you're writing these diagrams inside of a string with ASCII characters to represent the passage of time and values and stuff like that. If you're already really familiar with, because one of the problems is that some people who know Rx aren't actually that familiar with marble diagrams to begin with, like regular, graphical marble diagrams. And so they have to kind of learn two concepts at once. They have to learn what a marble diagram is fundamentally, and then how to represent them with this special custom DSL, this domain-specific language that we have created. It's not too difficult though. I think after taking a look at some of the examples, it becomes a little more self-explanatory.
Yeah, and everybody who played marbles as a kid should probably get it.
Yes, exactly. And there are also a number of Medium articles and blog posts and stuff that people have done over the last couple of years, that talk about the marble syntax in general. Those are still applicable to a certain extent. The version 6 inside the run method there's some subtleties, like a single dash no longer represents 10 milliseconds, it represents 1 millisecond. But other than that, everything else is correct.
Thank you for that, by the way, because I had these little tricks where I had to change the time to 10. That was an annoyance. That's a great thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's largely a side effect of the fact it wasn't really designed for public consumption, but people started consuming it, right? So, and another thing, so we've been talking about the test scheduler for a while. I do want people that are listening to this to know that using the test scheduler is not a requirement for testing RxJS code at all.
Absolutely not. No.
You can use a subject, you can use just a simple observable of or something like that.
You can use a library called Jasmine Autospies, which I wrote, which give you like auto spies for observables.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that, actually. It's the test scheduler is not a requirement. It's very helpful in instances where you do have timing issues, or you might in instances where you might have multiple concurrent things and you want to visually be able to see which one of those things is winning. But
there's also like if you're using a library like Jest has really good built-in mocking abilities of time itself. Like it has a really great library or really great hooks into that, and then you can imperatively advance time virtually. It has its own kind of virtual time type of thing, and then the RxJS will work with that just like anything else was, because it relies on set timeout and set interval and stuff like that. So those are totally fine. The marble diagrams are just a little more declarative and more specific to RxJS, but definitely not a requirement.
Cool. So
I'm sorry, I have to ask one more thing, because it used to be a separate library, the marble testing library. Is it now part of RxJS proper?
Good question.
It's always been part of RxJS proper. The separate libraries were kind of hooking the test scheduler and overriding it usually.
Yeah, providing some more niceties on top of that.
Got it.
Yeah, and so it is part of RxJS proper. There is still a couple, there's a library called Rx Marbles, I think it's called, that OJ made. Well, it's been updated. It now wraps testscheduler.run method. So cool. Ben, do you want to touch on the API changes for version 6, the imports?
Right. So the biggest set of changes, there's two real major changes for version 6 that happened. The first one was that we reorganized all of the exports from RxJS into a few sites, because before you would import you'd say import observable from RxJS/observable and import from event from RxJS/observable/from event. And you'd end up with dozens of imports per file for RxJS. And what we did is we consolidated that to importing any pipeable operator you import, instead of importing them from RxJS/operators/map and so on, you import all of them from RxJS/operators. And then for everything else, pretty much everything else, with a couple of minor exceptions, but as far as an Angular user goes, everything else would come from just RxJS. So you can import subject and behavior subject and observable and any of the schedulers from RxJS. So, and there's
thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. The major reason for that is it was just a headache to decide where to import things from. Sometimes people are importing things from the wrong spot. We do have a backwards compatibility package that enables people to still import from those spots if they're not fully ready to migrate over. But that's one major API change. And what happened is we
have also
moved it underneath a directory called internal, so people knew what they should not be messing with. If you're importing something in your app from RxJS/internal, it'll work, but you've voided your warranty. Like you might get a patch change that actually breaks that, because we've got license to move around anything underneath internal, because that's internal. It's not for public consumption.
Yeah, right. So be careful out there, and also you have the TS lint rules that.
Right. So the TS lint rules provide a variety of fixes, but the main one is going through and fixing that sort of thing. It's TS, was it RxJS-TS lint, and Minko Gebchev actually worked on that. He, I think I butchered his last name there, but anyways, Minko.
No, that's right.
He did a lot of work on that, and what it boils down to is that it's TS lint rules with an auto fix that will go through and update all of your code from RxJS 5 code to RxJS 6 code. And it'll work with any version of 5 code for the most part. And it does it in seconds. We ran the same code against Google, against, hundreds and hundreds of projects, and updated all of Google, and it worked. So it's been vetted pretty well. And it's been out in production now for several months, and I haven't heard too many complaints about it. So it's pretty solid. And I highly recommend using that if you're a TypeScript user. If you're not a TypeScript user, you might want to use the RxJS compat library and then slowly go through and migrate your code manually. Because if you're in JavaScript, we don't have the type information to make some of the automatic fixes.
Right. And so the imports location were one thing, right? And
right.
What are the other things, like in general, like?
So the other kind of major thing that has bitten a few people, but not too many. It usually bites people who write bad tests, but there's a change where RxJS, all previous versions of RxJS would, if you had an unhandled exception, what that means is if there is an error that propagated all the way down your observable, and then you did not have an error handler in your subscribe, either in your observer that you're subscribing with, or as like an actual function to handle the error, then RxJS will say, oh, okay, well, you're not handling this error, therefore it's an unhandled error, and I know what to do with that. I'll just rethrow it right now. And that's what previous versions did. And the problem with that is it would unwind the stack back to back through. This is JavaScript takes over when you synchronously throw an error. It says, I'm going to unwind the stack looking for a try catch. And everywhere there isn't a try catch, an error happened there too, in theory, right? So if there's a for loop that's notifying a bunch of consumers and say a share, then if one of those shared observable chains has an error and it propagates all the way back to that for loop, then all of its siblings that are also sharing that same observable no longer get notified. And it's a very, very hairy bug to track down. So in talks with the TC39, when the observable proposal was being examined, we decided that it would be better to do what's called host report errors, which is just a fancy way to say, put in a set timeout and then schedule a set timeout and then rethrow the error inside the set timeout. And what that does is it throws the error in its own call stack. So there's nowhere to unwind. And then it gets reported to window on error or process on error, and into your console in all modern browsers. So that's been kind of the solution. And where this could bite some people is the only place I've seen it bite anybody, honestly, is if someone has a test where they expect an observable subscription to throw an error. You can't really capture that in the test anymore, because what that's going to do is try to put a try catch around a subscribe call. And that doesn't really make any sense, because most observables are going to be asynchronous. So you can't really catch something asynchronous inside of a try catch unless you're doing like async await or something like that. We're dealing with promises, but that's a different animal. So the best way to handle that is either with async await and for each, or that's another method of subscription of observable, or better yet is just to add an error handler in your subscribe call in your test and say, oh, an error made it to this point, and just make an asynchronous test.
Cool. And okay, so change in the way you handle errors, so it's less hairy. So you basically shaved the solution or something like that, and then the imports. And other than that, are there other major changes?
Not really. Every other major change that we had in there, we reverted to just be deprecations. So they didn't break people. So we just we've got planned deprecations. Some of them are still being debated on the team. Like we're for sure deprecating. There's like a concat operator and a static concat method, and that causes problems. So we're for sure deprecating the operator. But when we deprecate it, we don't know if we're going to remove it or just kind of rename it to something else, like concat with. Like right now, the consensus is we're going to rename it to concat with. So I don't want to really say we don't know that we're going to do that, right? It's positive that we're going to do that, but we haven't. The work isn't landed yet. So there's things like that where we were going to remove operators or rename operators, and we chose not to do that in favor of just deprecating them for now.
I see. By the way, the TC39 thing, is it still on the go or?
No, the TC39 proposal, I spoke with Jafar Hussain the other day. It's been stalled for a very long time. I believe he's looking for someone else to take it over. So there's still a lot of people. It's one of those things where the community is very split. There's a lot of people that really believe it should be in the language, and there's a few people who aren't sure. Like I wouldn't say that there's anyone who's like, no, this should definitely not be in the language. But that lack of confidence is what's keeping it stalled.
Well, I think when we went to speak with Little Dan at WorkerConf, it sounded like really what it needs is more of a champion. So I know we've been sort of discussing that and figuring out how to get a champion to like sort of go into TC39 and just bring it up on the agenda again. Because I think a lot of times when it comes to proposals, and this is why voices are so important, and you don't realize how just, even commenting on one of these proposals can impact like TC39 is you just have to have more people talking about it so that people can like keep it top of mind and sort of like get their questions addressed. Ben, do you remember because I think some of the things that he was thinking that Dan was like opposing last time with Observable was kind of like a misunderstanding of how some of the things were working, but.
Right. I think that like some of it was just kind of, he wasn't sure how it benefited the community. He wasn't sure how broad the usage was. And, in speaking with them, he kind of realized that the usage is broad and growing. And one of the things he hadn't considered that I had talked to him about was that if we can get Observable to land in JavaScript proper, then we will have a much better debugging story for dealing with like going into like say Chrome dev tools and being able to debug what's happening inside of an observable. Because it's just like promises, right? Like a promise library is harder to debug in general than a native promise, because there's things they can do to get metadata about what's happening inside of a promise in Chrome dev tools or in other like native tools that are built alongside of the actual runtime. So if we can get Observable to land there, not only will we be shipping less code, but because Rx could just be built on top of that, but we would have a better debugging story, which is a big deal.
Nice. So maybe in the future, right? This is the current status, and one thing that you mentioned is adoption, and adoption comes from few things. I believe you're doing a good job in the community, and also you started new docs, which was a real pain point in the past. I know.
Tracey started that. Yeah, that's it's Tracey's baby. She kind of took that over because honestly, I just didn't have time to do enough. So
first of all, thank you, Tracey, and I would love to hear if you can share with us what's the current status on that, and if you need any help and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of another thing where you are like. I'm always pleasantly surprised how helpful I can be by not really being much help at all. So like my thing is just, get involved, and like do things, right? So the reason why I got involved in the docs was just because I kept hearing complaints about it, and like everybody was annoyed and frustrated and had other things on their plate. So I was just like, okay, and I kept trying to get other people to do it, but it's like nobody ever wanted to take initiative. So I decided to lead it. And now actually what's happened, and I've really loved seeing this transition. I was actually just noticing this on the team meetings today. So every other week we have a learning team meeting and we have a core team meeting. So beforehand, what would happen is like tons of people would come to the learning team meeting where they really felt like they could contribute. So basically what we did was we created like this new RxJS docs repo where we could have more explanation related things, real world examples, JS7 examples of how to use RxJS and these different operators. And Brian Tronconi from learnrxjs.io was one of the great people who like helped sort of like lend a lot of his like definitions of what the different operators were there. And then what happened was, the community sort of took a mind of itself. Jan Nicholas has been the one that's been mainly like helping shepherd a lot of the stuff that's been happening with the docs lately. But from that, we were able to get a lot of additional contributors to RxJS core. So Ben, I was so happy today to see like, the RxJS core team meetings have actually like there's been a lot more people that have showed up and started participating within the actual library. I don't know if you noticed that, Ben, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I absolutely noticed.
Yeah, it's like so great. But anyway, it's just so like, sorry, I kind of like derailed into like why it's awesome how the RxJS community and contributors are growing. But now Peter Bacon Darwin helped us create new API docs or create new docs generated from the API. And he used that with Jenny, which is what angular.io is used. I don't know if you guys know, but that's what they use to generate the docs for angular.io. So if you go now to the official documentation, that's using Jenny under the hood. And really what we're looking for now is people to take like things from the RxJS docs repo, meaning all the different like new explanations, JS bins, etc., that we've done already, and merge that with the new API docs so that we have like one source of truth. Because right now we're basically trying to reconcile the two. And it's really easy work. It's just like somebody needs to like dig in and help with that type of stuff.
Right. And the other thing I can tell people is generally I'm the primary one that merges PRs. And if you want to fast track to getting a PR merged in a popular repository, contribute to the docs at RxJS, because it pretty much you go through and I read it, and if it looks good or it looks okay, or if when somebody else in the core team reads it looks good and it looks okay, it's merged, and that's fantastic. And it's not. Some people might think it's not the sexiest work, but honestly, the docs get looked at way more than the source code does. So it's one way to think about this is that you'll be helping a lot of people by contributing to the docs. And the last release that we did, patch release, actually was after I had been for 4 weeks straight, probably once every other day, going through and merging 4 or 5 to 8 PRs somewhere in there. And when I cut a release, I generate the changelog based off that release. And so there was only one bug fix change so out of 30, 40 merged PRs, only one of those PRs was actually a bug fix. Everything else was documentation changes. So there's been a lot of really people doing a really good job helping to update the documentation, and we're trying to get that published out with every release. Now we're definitely getting it published out that's automated with every release. So it's a really good opportunity to contribute by contributing to documentation.
Yeah, that's that's the easiest way to get in, right? And by the way, how can I make it so that Google will stop showing the I think it's reactivex.io documentation, right? which talks about RX5, right? This is the current effort is to transition, right, to the new docs. So Ben, you work at Google. Can you like talk with them about like lowering the rank on
You'd be surprised how little pull I have here.
The docs, so I mean, if you go to the old docs, it just reroutes you to the new docs. So
really?
even if those show up as
the root,
even if those show up as search results. But I guess if you're not going to the root, then you still have that problem. We're actually working on that as well. We this is like another big effort. So like right now, if you really think about it, you have the original docs, then you have like the RxJS docs repo, and then you have the new docs, which is currently what the current docs are. So, but anyways, I think within the next like month or two, we're going to be like making, we're going to be like, I mean, there's been talk about like, for example, removing the old docs, but there's just some cleanup we have to do beforehand. So feel free to like open up an issue or tweet any one of us, and we're super happy to like guide you through how to help out with that initiative so it goes faster.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Deploy more, pay less with DigitalOcean, the simplest all-in-one cloud computing platform for developers. Scale and run cloud applications faster and more efficiently with effortless administration tools to robust compute, flexible configurations, networking services, real-time alerts, and rapid provisioning, while enjoying industry-leading price to performance with a flat pricing structure across all global data center regions at any usage volume. Spend more time building better web apps and less time worrying about managing infrastructure with DigitalOcean. Build your next app on DigitalOcean. Get started with a free $100 credit at do.co/adventures.
By the way, anyone from the panel, if you have a question, feel free to join and just like snatching the mic every time. But feel free.
All right, I'm gonna snatch your mic.
Yeah.
One of the things that changed that's interesting is you now discourage creating your own subclasses of observable in favor of piping, and I think you also discourage subclassing subject. Am I right about both of those things? I think I'm right about observable.
Yeah, I would discourage subclassing observable unless you've got a really, really important use case. But for the most part, it's kind of like subclassing promise, right? Like, if someone did that, you'd kind of look at them and be like, "What you doing?" Right? Like it's probably not something you need to do.
Yeah, it's something we used to do a fair amount though. That's why you had the lift operator and all that, but that's all gone pretty much, right?
Right. Well, that's not the entirety of the reason why we have it, but
so the one thing is that we're the RxJS community and the core team, at least my understanding is that there hasn't been. As far as subclassing observable, while discouraged, is still supported, and there still is an outstanding question because there are valid use cases. Redux observable is an example of a library that subclasses observable, and
NGRX does as well.
Correct, yeah, and there's really no other way to do what you need to do. There's a way, like you could just not subclass observable, and now type safety kind of suffers because you can't pass it to something that expects an observable. I mean, I guess with TypeScript it's a little easier just because TypeScript is structurally typed instead of nominally typed, and so you could make the structure of your fake observable look like the structure of a real observable without actually subclassing it. And then you could get away with it, but you wouldn't be able to get away with it in Flow where they're nominally typed. So I don't know. It's an outstanding question. It's a good question. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think my hunch would be, this isn't speaking for the core team, but my hunch would be that there's bigger fish to fry. So at the current moment, it's still supported and just discouraged to kind of, it sucks to have to say this, but there's kind of no better way to say that. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you understand why it's discouraged, it's probably okay that you're using it. If you don't understand, you probably shouldn't be using it.
Right.
Well, that kind of sucks.
So I'm sorry that I had to step away there. I had to, I had security call me from where I live.
Oh wow,
What's happening?
Everything okay?
it was their mistake. But yeah.
Okay. The snipers went home.
No, that's right. That's
They're
right.
like, there's a
Big
muscle-bound guy with glasses that's wearing a hat and he's
Mr.
talking about
Anderson.
RxJS.
Right. Right. So yeah, everything I was listening to what Jay said there, and everything he said is pretty much accurate. If you understand why it's probably not something you want to do, then it's probably okay that you're doing it because you'll be able to pivot later. This segues a bit into what I'm doing in the experimental branch of RxJS. So in the experimental branch of RxJS, there is a lift, but it's not a method on observable anymore. And then again, this is experimental. This isn't something that's set in stone, but it's looking pretty solid. So the goals of the experimental branch are to make RxJS lighter and faster, and the minimal amount of breaking changes. And what we've done, and actually preliminarily, I went through and updated an existing Angular app to, it was a Hello World app. So just like if you went and you just did Angular CLI, start a new app, named test or whatever, and ran it. And what I did is I went in and replaced RX6, which was sitting in there, with this experimental version of RX, and it still worked, which is good, obviously. But the size of RX in the bundle went from 17K down to 7K. And what I've found with the new experimental branch is, in every single case where I'm looking at bundling multiple operators or bundling multiple things together, the result is about 40% of the original size when compared to RX6. So, and it's faster in a lot of cases in terms of just individual interaction. So there's work if you go to the RxJS repository. There's a branch called experimental. In the README there's a design doc that's linked that describes the design. But part of this, the reason I got into this is part of this is, again, there's actually a lift function that I use in there, but it's not a lift method on observable anymore. And so that's one thing that the design is kind of stepping away from, because in order to do that particular thing, which doesn't work very well in TypeScript, at least for cases where you would need like higher kinded types or something like that, which just are never going to land in TypeScript, period. It's just not worth it. Like, we would actually have to go back to using classes. So the new design, actually everything is functions. Before I do these talks and I'd say observables are just functions. In the new design, observables are literally actually just functions. Like there's you still use them with exactly the same API.
You're saying it was all a lie before.
What?
You're saying it was all a lie before, but now they're really just functions.
I was lying to you.
No, it was a mental model, and it was a great mental model. But but the reality was it was classes, and now you're saying it's functions.
Yeah. So before we had a class that wrapped a function. Now we actually have a function as there. So if you were to, like in the experimental branch, if you were to go in and say source equals new observable, it would all act and look the same as RX6 does. But if you did type of source, you would get function now instead of object. So there's a few changes like that, and all of this is loosely based off of Andre Steltz's callbacks design. So it's a bit different. It's not the same design as his, because I'm threading through a subscription and not using talkbacks and a few other things for a variety of reasons. Usually, mostly just size and performance reasons. But yeah, that's the thing. And the Angular team is extremely excited about it. I know, because it means that you're knocking 10, 20, 30K off of Angular app sizes easily, because it's you're cutting you're doing more than you're cutting the RxJS size of it more than in half, and it's faster. So it's interesting stuff. I'm having a lot of fun working on it, and I should be able to get an alpha out of this in the next couple months. No promises, of course, because while it's a priority,
Because
I have
it's
other priorities.
observables.
Either Ivy.
Right. It's an observable. It can't be a promise.
Yeah,
Right. Yes. Yes.
we missed that.
You may or may not
So-
observe this in the next couple months.
So you're talking about basically RxJS 7 Alpha, no?
Yeah. That would be an RxJS7 Alpha, and whenever it's published. So the goal, again, with this is firmly to make everything smaller with the minimal amount of breaking changes. So we're not going to be moving files around again. But we will do another thing, like if there's things that we can take care of with like RxJS TS lint, with automatic transforms, we'll definitely do that again. If there's things we can take care of with backwards compatibility libraries, we'll definitely do that again. But whenever the alpha comes out, it's just like, here, if you want to play with this, feel free. It's definitely not here, go use this in production. That's just if you're crazy, use it in production, right? But yeah, so it's the goal is to make it smaller. I'm super excited about it. And
nice.
But the subclassing observable will not be a thing in this particular architecture unless we figure out a way to still have people do that.
Well, I think it's funny because, well, not funny, but I guess, for those who are listening who might have no idea what the hell Ben's talking about, because some of the RxJS stuff and like how it works is over your head, and, maybe you're just starting, don't let that discourage you from just like trying to learn more and trying to just like get involved or, start using RxJS slowly within your application, or ask questions on Twitter or write blog posts on this. Whenever I talk to like folks like Ben or any other, framework or library authors, y'all are always talking about like the next thing you're doing because that's what you're excited about, and you talk about like, beginner steps of RxJS stuff so often. But, just a note out there that
yeah, I'm with you, and I feel that tension too, because on this show we try and cater to both things. But when you get Ben and you get Jay on here, you kind of want to go where only they can go, and so apologies to anybody who thinks that this is a beginning, an introduction to RxJS.
Good point. Good point about that.
It's a great point. But it's exciting also to be able to have a show where instead of it's Shai and Ward messing up on what RxJS is, we actually get to talk to other people who know better, which is all three of you.
Well, for beginners in RxJS, I would say, I would just tell them that, while I'm the lead on the project, there was a time where I was a beginner at RxJS. Like it existed before I ever contributed to it for several years. And in fact, whenever someone was like, hey, do you want to help rewrite this? I was like, I'm not qualified to do that. So I don't know why you think you want me to do that. But it all worked out. But the point being that no one's born just knowing this stuff. And, I'm not an exceptionally smart person. I'm a pretty average person. I screw up every day just like everybody else, or maybe more than some other people do. I don't even know. But if someone ever looks at RxJS and is like, oh, this is so hard, tackle it like you would any other programming problem and just break it down into smaller pieces. Learn observable, learn filter, learn map, and try not to worry too much about the whole big picture and just focus on the little things and move your way forward. Because that's literally what I had to do.
Would you recommend starting with switch map?
Starting with switch map? I don't know if I would start with switch map.
I think Shai would.
Yeah. He's got the whole skit. Just watch Shai's skit on switch map and you'll be.
yeah, Shai, that's 1 down, 50 operators to go.
Yeah, Shai wins.
At least.
So we're going to need 50 ngconfs in order to get complete
to cover it.
So I have a thought. So sometimes people talk about, well, there's so many operators in RxJS, and it makes it so difficult to decide which one to use. Why did you guys implement all of these? And there are some operators that, of course, are derived from other, like you can build certain operators from other operators, and people are like, why is RxJS building these and supporting them? And honestly, it's because every single one of the operators generally has some nuance around it. And when I see people try to implement their own custom, even a custom mapping operator, if they try to do it themselves, it's as simple as that one is. More often than not, I see people mess it up. And so the reason that we have every operator under the sun implemented is, one, the way that we're doing things with pipables now, there's no bundle size impact if you're using a modern bundler. And two, now you have access to all, like, every operator you could probably want to use, and they're not, you know that they're tested very well. You know that they're tested for edge cases that experts know about, and these sorts of things. So you get some sort of guarantee of safety with some of these things. So if anyone ever asks you, why are there so many operators? It's because we're trying to help you out. But you don't really have to know all of them. I couldn't name them all off the top of my head right now if I had to, probably. If someone tested me, I would fail. It'd be a good game to play, actually.
Yeah, just and see how fast you can say them. And if we could get it done before the show ends, that would really be remarkable.
I would have to cheat. There's pretty much no way I would remember.
I have a suggestion, but by the way, I was preparing for the switch map talk in ngconf. We invented this term for us to make sense of, like, the flattening and the mapping. So we called it mappening operators, right? So I'm not sure if it's has any relation to what's actually happening, but it helped us, like, maybe categorizing the different operators with, like, cute names. So at least we'll have, categories so people could go to, and so maybe it's a suggestion for the docs or just talks.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And in that regard, it's kind of a shame that flat map was once it's still actually used to alias merge map, because flat map is not a great name, because if you look at it, like, concat map flattens and maps, switch map flattens and maps, merge map flattens and maps. So to say that merge map is flat map is one of the reasons we changed the name, is it just didn't make any sense, right? Like, all of these flatten, why does this one have a generic name? They're all kind of flat map operators. But the name flat map has been intimately related to merge mapping now for quite some time. So, we wouldn't be able to classify it in that manner, at least for several years, until people forgot, I guess. But
if you call all the four, right? There are four, like concat and merge and switch and exhaust, right?
Yes.
So all those are flattening and mapping, right? So mapping operator or something like that. Maybe those could be a category, one category out of the rest.
Yeah, there's definitely room for trying to categorize, because, like, right now I think they all just show up in a big pile.
And that's what
there's lots of. You should put the suggestion in on the repo for the docs, or even but I would put the suggestion in, have people discuss it, and then we come up with a good idea and run with it. But yeah, the docs need that sort of help. Honestly.
That reminds me, back to docs, Tracy, is somebody going to bring in there's some decision trees out there where you say, if I want to do this, then and you start working your way down the tree till you end up with a likely candidate. Is that going to be part of your docs?
Yes, we, if there's not an issue, I need to create an issue on it. And we're just looking for somebody from the community to get that done. Because that's Ben said that was one of the biggest complaints. Where's the choose your own operator doc? But yeah, we're definitely adding it back in. Or you can, Ward.
I could in my copious. All right, I got another one for Ben. This is from an Angular perspective. Now, many Angular developers will recognize that the dreaded "you changed it" twice during that one cycle error, that one change detection cycle. And it's quite easy to get that when you have an observable, because it can be synchronous. And so you could initialize, say, a Boolean to false, and then you do something and it immediately turns true. And that's because observables have the nice property that they can be synchronous. If I want to force an observable to be asynchronous, say to avoid that error, just take a tick. What's your recommendation?
The easiest way to do it is you can add an observe on operator and then provide to that like the ASAP scheduler. So what that'll do is it'll just force every single nexted item to happen on a microtask. So yeah, that essentially forces all notifications to be asynchronous.
What a lovely opportunity for you to...
thing I would say about that is if you have a synchronous fire hose, like say you, for some reason you have an observable that synchronously emits like 1 million values, which is nuts. But if you did, it's going to buffer all of those and then send them out in the next microtask. So because it has to, it has to remember them somehow before it sends them out asynchronously. But that's a really, really corner case. Like I don't think many people would have that problem.
Awesome. So I have, if we are on topic of Angular, so you joined the Angular team, and one question that we asked on the last episode was maybe the integration point with Angular, like RxJS integration points. We know that people who use NGRX are heavy users of RxJS. And we wondered about maybe the future of Angular or maybe other usages, because currently what we mentioned is that if you look at the template and the component and you want to subscribe, let's say, or not subscribe, but want to listen to an event, right? So you just bind it to a method, which is kind of the declarative way Angular always used to do. It's like another way to do it, and I saw you do it in several of your talks. Is to just subscribe to that event on a specific element, right? So will there be some kind of a way to maybe, I don't know, subscribe to an event in a way that doesn't break element out of the component class best practice or something like that? You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, right now, the current tech, the best thing to do is set up a subject, and then you can literally next on your subject where you're saying click equals and then subject.next $event, right? That's the right current tech. That's the best thing you can do. There are designs now. These designs are all hypothetical that we're talking about, but they wouldn't land until after Ivy lands. That's the biggest bit of work that's being done right now. But there are designs and a lot of thoughts being put around, and stuff that I'll be working on, being put around having additional template syntax. So you can say, you can define in your component that, I've got clicks, which is an observable, and maybe use a subject or something in there still. But what you end up doing, or maybe probably a custom type of some sort that's specific to Angular. And then what you end up doing is there's a new template syntax that says, oh, when you click this, I want that click event to go into this observable. And what that does is it gives us a way to, at compile time, decide that that's a cold observable that doesn't actually, the subscription doesn't actually exist until the component's actually mounted, or the observable itself is not, it's not hot. If you have a subject that you're nexting into, that's a hot observable, and that's a little different. But you'd still be able to test that way. But the long story short is we're trying to come up with better ways to get observables out of templates in a more seamless way for people. And then there's also we're looking into better alternatives than pipe async, even for binding out observables in views. And to kind of like what Ward was talking about, we're having these issues with change detection because observables can emit very rapidly. There's a lot of talk and work that's planned around dealing with state management in Angular and dealing with change detection in alternative ways. So trying to move forward in such a way that you might be able to get an observable chain to go all the way from click through whatever you're doing back out to updating the view without having to run through zones, which is kind of a bit of misdirection whenever you're doing these things, right? So there's a lot of work planned on that. It's only going to get better. I would say the Angular team is pretty into Rx. They're not your Hello World Ivy app is meant to be as small as possible. So technically that ships without much or any Rx in it. But once you start writing an Angular app, there's going to be there's always going to be a decent amount of Rx because it's looking like a solid choice for backing state management choices, even if it's not an API. Maybe you're not using the Rx APIs directly. Maybe it's just backing what state management's doing or whatever. But they're definitely all in with Rx and reactivity. And reactivity is looking to be a better solution for doing things like updating views than even zones can be. There's a few problems for example, and a lot of people that are in the know about this, but maybe just the general public doesn't. Async awaits, while it is a really interesting way to compose asynchronous things in JavaScript, it's great as far as readability goes. One of the issues with it is you can patch promise, but you cannot patch the promise that comes back from async await. So if you want to write something like zones that says, hey, every time a promise resolves, I want to go run some external logic. You can patch promise to do that, but you can't patch promises that are coming back from async await. And to date, this is fine because everybody's transpiling their JavaScript from TypeScript or something, and it takes async await code and changes it into regular promises, which are then patched. But in the future, especially now that all major modern browsers support async await, people are going to want to just ship the async await code because it's a lot smaller and it runs these native promises that can't be patched. So that means that you can't really hook those promises with zones. So it's the things like that are going to break zones. They're going to break zones. They're going to break fake async. They're going to break a lot of testing libraries that try to fake asynchrony. It's not just the Angular world that's going to break from this. And there's stuff in React, the React community, as far as testing libraries and stuff go, that are going to have problems. So going forward, looking at better solutions for state management, a lot of these will focus on using reactive approaches, be it RxJS or something that's derived from RxJS, or even just something that works well with RxJS. Things are going to get better, and the template work is part of it. Finding better ways to get observables out of templates, and finding better ways to take reactively obtained values and update your view is definitely another piece to that puzzle.
Wow, nice. Thank you very much. That's
mind blowing.
Mind blowing, and give.
I completely forgot about that await thing. When that lands, you're right. That's going to screw everybody.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They didn't put a hook in at all for testing when they wrote it.
So that's going to be a tectonic shift in a lot of asynchronous JavaScript libraries, and in particular, their testing harnesses here in the near future. So no one will be able to write a testing harness that does everything synchronously. It'll have to do it on the next microtask at a minimum, because you won't be able to get around the fact that some things are coming from async await.
Wow.
I have another Angular question for you, and it's something that many people ask. They ask about event emitter, and they say, "Why do we have an event emitter and we have RxJS subjects, and why is event emitter implemented as a subject, and is it going to continue to be used that way? And what's the future for event emitter?"
Right now, so I don't think event emitter is going to go anywhere. It's basically a subclass subject it does one more thing, and honestly, it's escaping me right now. The other thing it does,
it has an emit method, which is essentially next.
it's you know what? I think it's got a little bit in it that kind of it forces certain things to be async if a certain bit is flipped, but other than that, yeah, it has an emit method that's just alias next. You're right. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because event emitter, while it's a subject, it's owned by Angular, and it makes a decent candidate for some of the work I was talking about with saying that, oh, well, here I've got some template syntax that says convert these clicks or these mouse movements or whatever into an observable. And there's a reasonable chance that we'd be able to look at that and be like, oh, well, here they're using our type event emitter on this class, so we know what to do in order to support this and have the observable underneath the hood be cold. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Maybe the name will change or something, but I think Angular will end up probably always having some sort of specialized subject based off of either templating needs or its update needs or whatever. Right now it is kind of silly. It's in there, honestly. Like Stephen Fluen just the other day was talking about how he pretty much always uses a subject instead of event emitter for a lot of cases. I don't know. I've found that dubious. I wasn't involved in the original designs around that, so I'm not sure exactly what the original intent was there. But I can say that something like event emitter will definitely persist in Angular.
Well, actually, I do have some of that history about event emitter, and because it comes up in the reverse too. Like, should I write a message bus with event emitter, which people were doing, and we said no, use an observable, and that all I traced that back to talks with Rob Wormold, who said event emitter is only for communication between a parent component and its child component, and then everything else in the world you should use with observable. And that was kind of like, okay, we'll tell everybody that, but I don't really know why that should be the case. But that's the current statement of principle. Does that make any sense to you at all, or is that just history?
That makes sense. There's even been discussion of if there's a principled reason for this particular type of subject to exist on like a broader scale, actually taking it, giving it a better name than event emitter, and then moving it into RxJS. So if it is just a subject with some sort of scheduling baked into it, and that's a common use case, then maybe we have a scheduled subject or something in RxJS. And that's obviously I'm not committing to any of that, but there's been discussions about doing things that way as well. But yeah, I suspect it'll continue to exist. At the worst, if it doesn't continue to exist, everyone just starts using regular subject instead. But I suspect it'll continue to exist because it gives Angular a pivot point. Like they can go underneath the hood of that and change it much easier than they could go in and change subject. Because that'd be a hard stop for me. Like you're not going to change the behavior of subject on a million people that are using it that are not in the Angular community, right? So,
but come on, Ben, it's just a little change.
Yeah, right.
Which, by the way, I think RxJS right now, if you count 4 and 5 together, based on, I think it's NPM stat, has like over 12 million monthly downloads now. So it's been really cool to watch.
And 10 million is only Word.
No, that's Ben. He's got a little thing in there and it just downloads it continuously.
Yeah. It ramps up every week.
He's trying to run his stats up. Yeah, we're on to your game, Ben.
I actually accused Jay of doing that before. I think.
Well, probably because I don't know if you remember this, Ben, but I about a year ago I tested whether that actually works, and it does work. like NPM has no protections apparently in place to detect that and discard those stats. Like I ran a script just to see. I created a fake package and then ran a script to hit it. I hit the tar. Like you can download any NPM package via a tarball URL. directly. It's how NPM works under the hood. And so I just ran a script that did it for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days or something every second, like, just continues to do it all the time. And I left my computer open and it showed, hundreds of thousands of downloads. I was like, oh, that's nice.
I gotta do that too. Because I got stuff that's only got 12 downloads, and that's just not that's just not going to work.
15, maybe 16, Ward.
Sure, eventually.
The real thing is it's not, I don't know, it's not like it's a metric, but it's probably not a great metric. The only thing that that's encouraging about the NPM downloads for RxJS is they have been going up in a steady linear path, right? Like it would be one thing if they suddenly just jumped up overnight, then it's like, yeah, that's probably a script or something. But
I'm just adding more.
Unless someone's writing a very advanced script that's slowly ramping up how much it downloads, then
right, you're not giving me enough.
Probably organic.
Yeah, that's right. Jay is very much more subtle than that. He's
If someone intervenes.
So I got another killer Angular question for you. One of the things that people there's a huge dance around trying to make sure that you get your observable, but it's non-terminating. So you get it when you start your component, and then when the component goes away, you got to unsubscribe. You got to kill it. And right now, there's an awful take until dance that takes a lot of machinery in it, and it just feels like there ought to be a way that, since Angular is in charge of the component lifecycle, that I ought to be able to register my observable somehow with so that Angular can do that work for me, just in the way that async pipe kind of does. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, just to add to that, because one of the confusion I see when, in my clients' questions and stuff like that, or students, is where Angular handles some of the subscriptions, like HTTP or which completes immediately, and the routing, I think, or some of those, right?
The activated route is actually, you can let that go because it automatically disconnects itself. Yeah.
So, and the custom ones obviously are not, and this is what Word asks. So there is some friction there or some confusion, as sometimes it's automatically and other times it's manually.
Sure.
So yeah.
I've got something for you for that. That we were actually just discussing this the other day. So one of the kind of designs that's being thought about right now is taking all of the lifecycle hooks for like the on destroy, on init, those sorts of things, and actually having a way to just have an observable of that. So I think the idea was to actually just bring in a function, and maybe the function's called on destroy $sign or something like that, and then you just pass this. So you pass your component instance to that, and it would do the work of creating an observable from the destroy lifecycle hook for that component. So in that case, it would become easier to be like, okay, take until on destroy of this, take until on destroy of this, and you could just do that over and over again, and it should be fine.
Yeah, that would be cool. And to be honest, all lifecycle hooks could simply themselves be observables that you could hook into somehow.
Right, and that's
instead of having 6 or 7 of them, just have one thing. I'm interested in life cycles, and here's what I want you to do. When I see that this thing comes down the pipe, then I'll hook into it and do whatever magic I want to do, and be done with it.
Sure, and that's an option. I think that the concern right now is that the standard lifecycle hook is just a function, which is very lightweight. Observables aren't that heavyweight, but if you start adding 6, 7 observables to every single instance of in your app, regardless, just preemptively, because maybe you need them, that's a problem. So if we were going to add something like that, it would have to be something that was very tree shakeable, and wasn't added until you actually needed it. So I think
I'm thinking one hook, one life. I'm thinking one life cycle hook, and if it's and it's all life cycle events flow through it, And obviously, if I don't subscribe to it, then it's never becomes, never lights up. But the compiler doesn't even have, if it doesn't see the mention of that thing, then it won't hook it. And so it's right back to the same cost it is today. You use no lifecycle hooks. Actually, it reduces the cost because there's only one thing to ever look at. Ultimately, well, anyway, that's my dream, is that there would be one place to go for lifecycle things instead of having to know all the 6 or 7 lifecycle hooks, and one place to tap in and stuff like that. But
my dream is to know what Jay Phelps' hobbies are.
Oh boy.
Software.
Because
outside of work,
WebAssembly.
guess what I do outside of work? Software. So yeah, compilers, WebAssembly. Those are my biggest hobbies. Is
Eating gummies.
Let's just bring up that eating gummies, because I literally gave Jay like 5 bags of gummies. Okay, and in one day they're gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Maybe he gave them to someone else.
No, I ate them.
So this is a real thing. So Jay and I, like when especially when he lived here in Silicon Valley, we used to go to the movies, and we go to the movies, and I would be like, oh, I'm gonna go get a drink. You want anything? And, yeah, sure. And I'd come back and and every time, even if he told me not to, I would come back with our both of our drinks and whatever snack he requested, and like at least 2 bags, like those big bags of gummies, or whatever gummies they sold at the movie theater. And he would eat the whole bag, both bags every time. It was like basically it was like taking my kids to the movie theater, kind of. Not exactly the same.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's on the ADA's list of approved foods, as I recall, right? Gummies. That's like at the top of the nutrition pyramid.
I think so. With the rest of the sugar, that's why they put it on top.
You're getting your protein.
It's got some bone meal in it, right? Or some gelatin or whatever.
Yeah, just start checking yourself regularly if you get to that age. Okay, so we're getting close to the peaks, to the end of the show. I just want to ask, what were the craziest moments in the last year of RxJS? I heard something about like an operator as a joke or something like that.
I think the craziest moment is when Ben threatened to kill me. I think that was probably... No, I'm just kidding. He didn't do that.
Oh, do share.
It only happened once.
No, of course not.
Well, Ben, you had an April Fool's joke that kind of went sideways on you, didn't you?
I'm blaming Jay for that one.
It is my fault, actually.
What was that?
So what happened was we... Oh boy. So I don't know how familiar you are with Smushgate, but there's this thing that was dubbed Smushgate, where there's a flat map. There was a flat map method that was slated to be added to array, and it's in a proposal. I think it's at stage 3 now, actually, for array. Is that right, Jay? It's stage 3?
I think it even is stage 3 or 4.
Yeah. So it advanced through pretty quickly. And it's the thing for flattening arrays. But anyways, there's a conflict between it and I think MooTools, or something like that. I think it was MooTools, and people were people on the CC39 were like, "Oh God, we're going to break the web if we add this." So someone proposed that they change it to Smush, and it's a dumb name. It's horrible. Smush is a horrible name for a method that does that. And that's what they proposed that they're going to change it to. And there's this big stink about it. And so for April Fool's Day, Jay Phelps had the wonderful idea of changing all of the flattening operators for like merge map, merge all, merge, etc., to variations of the word smush. So like smush, smush map, smush all, and so on. And so he submitted PR, and I published it. So the bad part's my fault. So I published it, and we had just published RxJS version 6-RC0 like days before this. And so on April Fool's Day, I published RxJS 6.0 -smush.0.
Wow.
And as it turns out, and nobody else knew this but Igor Minar, actually. Anyone else that claims to know this, I'm going to call you a liar, because no one else I knew this. Like having having text in your version number, it's alphanumeric the way that this gets sorted out. It has nothing to do, like it's not namespaced if you just put a name in there. And I thought it was, everyone else I knew thought it was namespaced, with the exception of Igor. And Igor points out and was like, hey, did you know if you install RxJS, Alpha, or RxJS 6 Alpha, or RxJS 6 Beta, or even RxJS 6 RC0, you're getting this smush thing? And I was like, what, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, no. And then I tested it out, and sure enough, he was right. He tells me this right away, and within like 5 minutes, I tried to unpublish it. However, RxJS gets used by so many people and is instantly added as a dependency to so many projects via automation or whatever, that NPM has classified it as some sort of special protected package. So it falls under a different bit of logic that doesn't allow me to unpublish it, which meant that in order to publish new release candidates, I had to come up with names or version numbers that were alphanumerically higher than 6.0.0-smush.0. So that means that there was one that was like 6.0.0-tactical-RC-1. What I named them? One was Turbo. One was, I went through a bunch of different, they're all in the changelog. If you go look at the RxJS changelog. But yeah, I had to publish all sorts of silly names in order to keep this updated. And it was just silly.
The price you pay for not knowing some esoteric thing that Igor Minar knew.
Right. Exactly.
Last year, we published the smooth operator for April Fools. So it was an operator where if you called it and then subscribed to it, it would, in the background, just start playing the smooth operator.
It still exists. It's still published. You can go out and install it and use it. So
that's all it did, was play the song, smooth operator.
It reminded me of me and Nori Shaked want to create a VS Code extension that whenever you get lower on your testing coverage, it starts singing, "You should be testing."
What?
Yeah. But more on that on later episodes. Okay, so we're in the end of the episode. We've gone way over our time, but it was super interesting, so we just let it go. Let's start with the picks. Joe, have you got any picks for us?
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says "Pay me now." And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the "How did you hear about us" section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the "How did you hear about us" section.
I got picks. I've been picking this a lot lately. I've been playing around with sort of my own personal organization and discovered a couple of tools that I think are super awesome for organizing tasks and that sort of thing. The first one is Notion.so, which is a little bit like an upgraded wiki. So it's like a page where you create the website as directly in the page as you're editing it, but it's more about organization. And so you can add like calendars and you can add Kanban boards, wherever you want, and you drag them around on the page, and then they just stay there when you come back to the page. There they are, and task lists and that sort of thing. Very cool. But the other one that I really, really, really liked is Workflowy, just because it was so crazy simple. It's just so obvious how you use it when you first start using it. And then as you get into it, you realize there's tons and tons and tons of power that isn't obvious immediately, but it's crazy powerful. So those two tools are very awesome, and I highly recommend them if you feel like you at all need some kind of like task manager of any reasonable complexity. And finally, I always like to mention that the Framework Summit's coming up in October 2nd and 3rd. And there'll be a lot of awesome stuff going on there. Angular team there, giving keynotes and so on and so forth. Come check it out.
Awesome. And just to add to that, on the last episode, after you had to go, I mentioned that I'm going to release an extension to Workflowy as a Chrome extension. It lets you manage your sprints, so you can calculate tasks, how much time, estimated time, and how much time you spend on them, and all that stuff. So kind of cool. Okay, cool. So Ward, what are your picks?
Well, as you know, I love to pick really important. I like to send out really important picks. And so my pick today is a website called National Day Calendar, which tells you what the national day is. Today happens to be the National Hot Dog Day. So we're recording this on National Hot Dog Day, and I think that's really important news.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, so Ben, what are your picks for today, if you haven't?
Oh boy, I think my top pick would be the thing I'm most excited about, which is the experimental branch in RxJS. And again, there's a design document out there; people can comment on it. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped about that. It's going to be a big chunk of work for me going forward, but I'm really excited about what it means for everybody's app sizes and that sort of thing, especially alongside Angular Ivy. I'm pretty pumped. So yeah, if you go to the RxJS repository and switch the branch over to experimental, you'll see links to the design document and all that other stuff. And I recommend going and look through it.
Awesome. Tracy.
Yeah, so my pick is going to be Rx Workshop, because we were working on it. Well, Ben and I always try to record it during our public Rx workshops, the online version, but we kept failing at getting a good recording. So Rx Workshop, Jay Phelps just recorded it, and RxJS 6, it's updated to the latest RxJS 6. So if you check out rxworkshop.com, you'll be able to get the latest and greatest how-to for Rx Workshop. And it goes through the fundamentals, basically. It teaches you how to multiplex over a WebSocket and do a lot of other really, really cool things. So check it out.
Nice. And Jay, what are your picks?
My primary pick is going to be brow.sh. So that's brow.sh. And that's a website. That is a domain. And it's a service. It's an app. Well, so a service and an app that are two separate things. But it basically takes Firefox, renders web pages, and it generates. How do I explain this? It's a browser that's completely text-based, but it defers to Firefox for actually generating and I wanted to say the word render, but I'm trying to not use the word render because technically that's not what it's doing. It renders text. So like images are in text, everything's in text, but it uses Firefox under the hood so that it is fully compatible, runs JavaScript, even WebGL. It's a very impressive thing. Just take a look at it, go to brow.sh, or in your console, you can actually SSH into their server. So in your terminal, you can just say SSH space brow.sh. And once you accept the RSA certificate, you'll be able to actually browse the web remotely completely in your terminal. It's wild.
Wow, I didn't know you can SSH from your console.
Yes.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so I have one. My first pick is a blog post I've written about what we've talked about today, which was a follow-up post after our switch map talk at ngconf, which called a super ninja trick to learn RxJS's switch map, merge map, concat map, and exhaust map forever, which I think is the longest ever, like longest blog post name ever. But yeah, I'm going over all the 4 operators and breaking it down into, I hope, simple step to help remember what they do and when should you use them. So that's one pick. Second pick is a site called testangular.com, which is a domain I bought to publish a free workshop under there to anyone who wants to learn about testing and Angular. So check it out. And currently it's, I didn't I just put a placeholder there, but I'm going to upload some cool stuff. And VS Code, their latest version, allows you to split your screen into multiple areas and combine that with the terminal split. I now can actually see everything in one screen, like all the server running, tests running, all that stuff in one screen. So check out the latest version of VS Code. They're doing a really, really good job. And with that, I want to thank all of you, Ben, Tracy, and Jay, for joining us today. It was super, super interesting, and we got to talk a lot about the future, which is cool. So thanks so much, and hope we'll get to talk with you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Peace out.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.